Hey, everybody, ladies and gentlemen of the Blue Line, law enforcement professionals, everybody out there. You know, there are lessons to be learned from officers who have come before us, who have done things that we haven't done, who have done things better than us, who have more skill in it. So I'm going to tell you about an incident. This is going to be important for you, whether you're a patrol officer, detective, doesn't matter. This is going to help you do your police work and do it better and more thoroughly. And so I moved into the detective bureau, and I was working with some amazing people. And one of the most amazing people was a detective named Jeffrey Layton. And Jeffrey was a mild-mannered individual, a good and decent family man. He was a fun guy. He wasn't a drinker, he was just an all-around good guy, but he was a great cop. He was a great cop, and he worked his way through patrol. They put him in the detective bureau because he was smart, and he saw things that other people didn't see, and he had a great way about him. I talk all the time about being professional. Jeffrey was very professional, and he could talk to a brain surgeon or a street person. He was excellent and amazing that way, and he saw things as an investigator that you might miss, that other detectives missed, that patrolmen miss, that when I got in the bureau, and Jeffrey and I got along very well, I would go to crime scenes with him. When you're a new detective, you would go to a crime scene with a veteran detective. You saw what they did, how they did different things. Well, one of the things that Jeffrey had told me, and it was a lesson that I've included in my book, the interview, as well as in the investigation. Both of them books, you can see them back here. The investigation, you can get them from Blue 360 Media, our publisher. All right, which let's talk about that for a second. Blue 360 Media is the publisher that brings you this program. If you need anything, my books, any other kind of material for law enforcement, go to blue360.com and take a look. They have everything. And soon we're coming up with a school safety and security portion of the publishing house, which is going to be video training, everything for keeping your school safe in the community you protect. And our other sponsor is Medical Essential Diagnostics. This group covers New Jersey. Any state worker, county worker, local worker, if you work in New Jersey, you can get a full, complete medical from them. You simply show up with your insurance card, you and 2 other adults in your house. And you go in, and one day you get heart, lungs, blood, everything you need to know to find out if there's something wrong, so you can fix it before it gets you, right? You want a healthy career, you want a healthy retirement. So medicalessentialdiagnostics.com. Go check them out, make an appointment. It's free, you and 2 adults with you. And blue360media.com. They are the greatest publishers ever. All right, so now that we talked about them, that's important. On here's my contact. PangaroTraining.com is my website. And if you go to joe@PangaroTraining.com, you can send me an email. Tell me you liked the show. Tell me you didn't like the show. Tell me you want to talk about something. Tell me you want to come on the show. You have something interesting to tell other law enforcement officers, and you can join us. All right. So to take us back to this important information that Jeff Layton taught me, that I'm going to pass on to you, because it is probably one of the most valuable things that you might not have ever thought of. And maybe you did. Maybe you're a Jeff Layton. You're that kind of person, that guy or girl, and these kind of things come to you. But for the rest of us, once he told me this information, I was like, aha, that seems, and then when I saw it play out in real life, it was working. So what is it, Lieutenant Joe? You're going on and on. Let me tell you what it is. Jeff said to me, when you go to a crime scene, no matter what kind of crime scene it is, a burglary, an assault, a sexual assault, a robbery, even a homicide, anything, any kind of a crime scene you go to, when you get there, you're going to be energetic, right? You're going to this crime scene, and the more profound the crime scene, the more it's going to be interesting for you. And you're going to get there, and then you're going to talk to the officers on scene, or you're going to talk to the victims or whoever's on scene, and they're going to tell you this happened, that happened, and this, that, and the other thing. And then you're going to go and start investigating. And if you are a patrol officer, you might be looking around to see if you can find the point of entry. You might talk to the victims, find out what's missing or who did what to who. Um, as a detective, you're going to show up and you're going to need to process the scene, take pictures, fingerprints, other forensic type of evidence. And there's a frenzy usually, and it could be a calm frenzy, but it's a frenzy. You've got all these things to do. You have to set up your equipment. You want to go out and get all the fingerprints, and it could be hours that you're at a scene. Well, when you're all done doing the work you have to do, what Jeffrey told me was when you're all done, you packed your stuff away and you put it back in the car and you're ready to leave and you're calmer now. Everybody's calmed down now. He said, go back and walk your crime scene without all of that pressure on you. You've already looked at everything. You've taken your fingerprints. Now you're calm. Go walk that crime scene, because what'll happen is that without that pressure on you, you will see things you might have missed the first time. Or when you were investigating inside the house or inside the business or in the car, whatever it was you were investigating, you've seen things now that if you walk around the scene a little more, you might see things you might have missed, because now you know they have some kind of significance. All right. So how do we put that into perspective? Right. So two things. First of all, we had a string of house burglaries in a very high-end part of our town. And one of the things we found was that we used to look for patterns, right? What's the pattern here? What's the criminal pattern? Because criminals operate on patterns very often. And we found that the houses that the criminal was hitting in this serial burglar case were all houses that sat on a corner and had woods or something behind them where there'd be no other people looking into the yard to see the burglar doing his business. And we started putting that together, and then we did a little task force. We got some officers, we grabbed some patrol officers, some unmarked cars. We went and we identified other houses in those high-end neighborhoods that matched that pattern. They were high-end houses, woods behind them on a corner property. And we would set up in that area, right? And we had trucks that looked like plumbers' trucks, and we had trucks that looked like painters' trucks, and we sat in the back and we could see what was going on. We made observations. And over the course of time, we were out doing this surveillance, and we saw a guy come out of the woods, and he stopped by the edge of the woods looking at this one house, one of the houses we had picked out as one of them matching his pattern. And he stood there smoking cigarettes. Now, we got there at 6 o'clock in the morning. He probably showed up about 8:15, 8:20, something like that. The homeowners were still home, but he stood there smoking, and he's dropping cigarettes. Now, he was got to be 30, 40 yards away from the house in the woods, but he could see the street. He could see everything there, and we could see him. He smoked 5 or 6 cigarettes, and in about 15 minutes, we saw both homeowners get in their car and leave. Now, the house was unoccupied now. So what this guy did is then he came out of the woods where he was smoking, and he knocked on the front door. Nobody answered, so he went around the back, and he forced his way in. Nobody saw him, and he stole goods. Well, we arrested him as he went back into the woods with all these goods. But we noticed where he was smoking. And after interviewing him and him confessing to about 9 or 10 burglaries, not only in our town, but in towns near us that had similar high-end neighborhoods, we said, you know what we missed? He was smoking. He was watching the houses for the homeowners to leave. So we then went back to all of these crime scenes where he had woods and areas that he could see, but people couldn't see him. There was nobody there. And we found piles of cigarette butts at every one of the jobs. Now, if we had known we were looking for that prior to that, right, we could have talked to him about it. But it turned out he did the same pattern. He would sit and smoke and watch and wait for people to leave. Then he'd hit the house. It was a pattern. And the only way we found that was through this interview with this guy, right? So moving forward with that information, Jeffrey Layton was like, listen, if you walk that crime scene, had you walked those crime scenes, you might have found piles of cigarettes at all of them and said, wow, that's unusual. Who stands there by the woods and smokes 5, 6, 7 cigarettes? So his theory seemed great to me. I really liked it. Fast forward, I'm a detective, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and there was a string of Dunkin' Donuts burglaries up and down the East Coast of the United States. So many, in fact, that there was a task force set up, and I was on the task force. I was part of this big task force because we had gotten hit, right? We had gotten hit. So that put us on the task force. And one night there's a Dunkin' Donuts on the highway, and right next to it was a construction site. They were building a new office building kind of thing. And the patrol sergeant was riding up and down, patrolling, watching his officers, right, doing what he's doing. He passes the place at, I don't know, 12 o'clock at night. He goes by again at like 1:30, only this time, parked in between the two buildings is a van. Now, that van wasn't there at 12 o'clock, and who's going to a construction site at 1 o'clock, right? So the Sarge does the right thing. He pulls in, calls for some more cars. They come over, and they were talking to two women in the van. Turned out the women were from the Bronx, New York. And there were a whole bunch of pry bars and all kinds of stuff in the van. And they start talking to these women and say, you know, what are you doing here? And well, we were in Atlantic City and we were partying and we were driving home to the Bronx and we were tired. We decided to pull over and we figured we would sleep here. Didn't match where they parked. You could have pulled over. You could have pulled over in the mall. You could have pulled over to 7-Eleven. There was hundreds of places that were open. You could pull in. They pulled in between the Dunkin' Donuts and this construction site. Now, the Sarge originally thought that they were going to do something to the construction site, you know, steel pipes, steel copper. But two women, that just seemed out of place. Doesn't mean women can't be criminals. Doesn't mean women can't go out and do things. But it seemed odd to them that two women from the Bronx sitting in a van by themselves. And they asked if anybody was with them. And their answers were, of course, they were looking at each other. No, nobody else is with us. Nobody else is with us. And then it dawned on the sergeant. There's a Dunkin' Donuts next door. And he's got a bunch of officers, and they ran over and started checking the building. And on the driver's side window, you know, the window that you hand off to the drivers, hand off their donuts and coffee, he found that pried open. They went inside, and they found that cash had been taken. Lots of cash, similar to every other burglary that had been happening up and down the East Coast. So they had these women there, and they said, this doesn't sound right. You're on the scene of the burglary. They take them into custody, and the women end up admitting that their boyfriends were with them, but they both had warrants. And when they saw the police car go by, they decided to take off and run. So I don't know where they ran. Did they do the burglary? Oh, I don't think they did the burglary, but they ran because they knew they both had warrants. Was their story, right? That's their story. But now we know we have two men in the area and the place is burglarized. Connect the dots, right? So I didn't get called out to that crime scene. I wasn't on call. Another detective was on call, a junior detective who was kind of new, but squared away, pretty smart. And that junior detective went out, dusted, photographed, interviewed the girls, you know, got some more information, but that was about it. Come in the morning now. I come in, another couple of detectives come in, and we're talking about it. We're looking at the case file. We're reading over the report from the detective the night before. And one of my partners, Kevin McDermott, him and I were working together that day. I said, hey, listen, let's go take a ride out to that Dunkin' Donuts. And he goes, for what for? I said, for the Jeff Layton theory. He goes, what do you mean? Let's go out and let's walk around the scene. Let's see if they missed anything, right? They had focused on the building. Let's see if they missed anything. So we pull up to the Dunkin' Donuts. Now you got to picture this. You got the construction building. Behind the whole area is an apartment complex way in the back. To the left of the Dunkin' Donuts is like a swamp, and there's a big fence, wrought iron fence, all the way around the Dunkin' Donuts property. To the left of the Dunkin' Donuts is a swampy area, you know, one of them highway overpass things because they got water going underneath, and it's all swampy out there. So Kevin and I parked the car. We go talk to the manager, say, hey, did you find anything else out since last night? Did anybody, employees, see anything? No. So, well, we're going to take a walk around the property. And he goes, okay. Knock yourself out. So what was taken was a whole bunch of cash bills, and a whole big thing of coins, a couple $100 in coins, right? They also had. So Kevin and I go out and we start walking the perimeter, and we start on the right side. We work our way around to the back. And as we get to the fence on the side, we're walking up. I see something flapping inside the chain link fence thing, right? I see something stuck in there, and I go walking over, and it's a dollar bill. There's a dollar bill flapping because it got caught by the wind, and it's up against the fence. And I grab it and I look at Kevin and I said, sure, somebody could have been getting change, making change at the window to drive up and drop the dollar. Of course, it could have. It just don't feel right, does it? No. He goes, we're going in the swamp. I said, yes, we're going in the swamp. So we went around the fence and we walked to the back where the dollar was. Now we're on the other side of the fence. And we start looking around, and there's a trail there because kids rode their bikes through there. People walk through there from the highway to the neighborhood. And we see like boot prints in the mud, fresh boot prints. Let's just go follow these boot prints. Now, it was probably, how far were these woods? Because there was, like I said, there was an apartment complex to the back here, and then the woods kind of went by. It's probably 150, 200 yards to the neighborhood, right? We got about 100 yards into the swamp following this trail. And what is sitting on that trail? 2 pry bars, a big bag full of money with bills in it, and all the coins, and a couple of other tools. What happened? The bad guys came, they went over, they did the burglary, they got out, they saw the cops, they took off. This stuff is heavy to carry, a couple $100 worth of coins, a bag of stuff, all these pry bars and stuff. They dropped them on the trail and they took off, and they left. We photographed all of that. We brought all those tools into headquarters and we dusted them for fingerprints. And you know what we found? We found very good sets of identifiable fingerprints that led us to 2 suspects who lived, drum roll please, in the Bronx. We ended up identifying them, talking to the girls some more. They were arrested, and it turns out they were part of a group that were doing these Dunkin' Donuts up and down the East Coast of the United States. So when we look at this, 2 things to learn, to take away from this. The sergeant drove by and made observations, and he saw something out of place and something different, and he didn't just drive by. He went in and he investigated. Everybody should be curious. If you're a law enforcement officer, you should be curious about everything. Why is that there? Why did he say that? Why is she going there? Why is she wearing that? What's he do this? Why you do? You got to be curious about all this stuff. The sergeant was curious, and he went in and he started investigating. The second thing is the Jeff Layton walk around your crime scene theory was proved out 100%. Because if we had not gone back to walk the perimeter, to just see what the crime scene said to us, we never would have found those tools. We never would have found that money. We never would have been able to solve this crime. This was a major crime. And it was solved because we took a few minutes with no pressure and went back and we walked the crime scene and saw something that didn't look right. And we followed up on it. That's the lesson. It's the lesson I thank Jeffrey Layton for, because he was an outstanding detective. I have adopted that. I can't tell you. I could tell you more stories here, but we're going on and on of the exact same thing that's happened. Calm, walked that crime scene, and I found things that led me to the criminals. So that's an important thing. Patrolman, detective, don't matter. Whatever you do, patrol officer, doesn't matter. Walk your crime scene calmly and look for things that are out of place. You never know what you're going to find. So that's our lesson for today. Walk that crime scene, pay attention. Remember, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Like and subscribe and tell your friends about us, right? We got a lot more coming.